Sounds good. I think I'll get us started. Good
Okay.
afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Mental Health for Pre-Departure Students workshop facilitated by Regina Chari. This is co-hosted by Regina and the Education Matters team. And we really thought it would be an amazing opportunity to kind of give you guys some information on how to prepare for university because your mental health is extremely important as you're making this transition to university. And we've invited Regina Chari, who's going to give insight into the different things that you can do to best prepare to start off your university journey in a mentally well state, and all the different things that you can do to continue to maintain that as you move across the world or start university wherever you're heading out. I'm going to let Regina introduce herself and give you a bit more information about the work that she does and get us started. So thank you again for joining us, and I'll hand over to you, Regina.
All right. Thank you so much, Tapiwa. It is so nice to be able to gather with you all today. If I understand this right, you are all getting ready to leave for university. Is that correct, Tapiwa?
Yes.
Okay, so you guys are all admitted into university. You're all ready to go. You probably haven't packed your bags yet, but you probably want to. And I would love to hear in the chat box what universities you are going to. I'm so interested to hear what schools you have gone to. I am an American. I've been living in Zimbabwe for 16 years. And I'm married to Nyasha, who is going to join us in a few minutes to share some experience. Tapiwa's doing that, you don't have to. And we are going to talk today about how to get ready for university in regards to your mental health. Because I know you're doing all of these things to get ready. You are probably learning about the city and the campus that you're moving to. You're probably learning about your new roommates and your schedule if you already know your courses. I know that you guys are doing a lot of things to get ready. You're probably buying lots of things and organizing funds to buy things when you arrive at school. But a big part of preparing for university is making sure that you are mentally prepared for what is to come. So that is what we are going to talk about today. I went to university in the States. I graduated with a bachelor's in social work from Michigan State University, and I grew up in Michigan. So I don't know if any of you are going to Michigan State. Let me see if I can pull. I can't see the chat box, Tapiwa, so maybe, oh wait, there we go. Oh, Daniela, are you going to Michigan State? Go green. Oh, that is so exciting. Trish is going to University of Nebraska. I'm so excited to hear the schools that you guys are going to. So go green. Harvard. Okay, I did not go to Harvard. Texas A&M. This is so exciting. I then graduated with a master's in social work from Washington University in St. Louis. And I was working as a clinical social worker in California before I moved to Zimbabwe. And then I met Nyasha and ended up staying in Zimbabwe. And I've been here for 16 years. I do a lot of mental health work with children and adolescents and their families. And I have a special focus on trauma and how our trauma experiences in childhood impact our mental health as adults. So let's just jump right in and see if I can work the tech. There we go. University of Idaho and Wesleyan. I am so excited for all of you. These are all incredible schools and you are gonna love being on those campuses. So we're gonna talk about some good news first. The good news is your dreams are coming true. You have all worked incredibly hard. You have done well on your exams, you've done all that hard paperwork and applied to university, and you've done the hard work of waiting and getting your scholarships. There is so much good news here. Your dreams are coming true, and we just want to cheer you on in that. There is so much to be excited about. However, there's a little bit of bad news here. You are in transition. And transitioning to university, even though it is so exciting and it is your dreams coming true and it's the beginning of this whole new life that you've just been waiting and waiting and waiting for, it is still a transition. and transitions are hard. And that is just the bad news of it, that change is hard. The transition moving from high school to university is one of the hardest transitions that an adolescent can experience. That transition for me was incredibly hard. I was 18 years old when I moved to Michigan State. It was only 2 hours away from where I grew up, and yet it was still a really hard transition. For most of you, you are transitioning not only into university and onto your campus, but you are transitioning into another country, into another culture. There is a lot of change going on here. And one of the things that we don't often acknowledge well for people in your position, for young adults who are moving in to this dream come true, is that there is no change without loss. And each one of you are going to have things that you are giving up in order to achieve and accomplish these dreams that you have set forth for yourself. And in acknowledging that loss, we have to acknowledge that there is grief. Because even when you are losing and gaining so much at the same time, there is still grief involved. The other thing that I want you to know, which is very, very good news, is that you can find purpose in the midst of this grief cycle as you say goodbye to so much of what you've known for your whole life. So what does the grief cycle look like? We want to talk about that really quickly. For many of you, you may have, if you've taken a psychology class before, you may have learned about the stages of grief. For many of you, you will have to take Psych 101 at some point in your early years of university life, and you will probably talk about this a lot. The stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. However, I think there is a stage that comes after that, after acceptance, and that is purpose. So let's talk about what this looks like when you are transitioning to university. What we need to understand is that although you are gaining a ton, right, you are losing a lot as well, and all that you are gaining doesn't override the loss. Just because you're gaining lots of good stuff in the midst of this season of loss, it doesn't mean that the grief doesn't exist. You will still have to grieve all that you are saying goodbye to. Now, if I were to ask you, and I think because this is a small enough group, let's see if we can do this. On the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and answer, I would love to hear what you are already aware of that you're going to be giving up in order to have this opportunity. Can you think of some things that you're having to say goodbye to, some things that you're having to release or to give up in order to have this experience in the States going to university? I would love to hear what resonates for you for some of the losses. And while you guys are shouting some of those out or jumping on the chat and putting those in, I'm gonna let you know that grieving the loss is actually a big part of preparing to go to university, because the more you grieve the losses that you will have, the more emotional margin you're creating for upcoming stress. And school will be stressful, without a doubt. So you guys are saying you're having to release and let go of your family, your friends. Many of your friends are moving to different states. Nicole is moving to a different state for her master's, so she's saying goodbye even to her college friends. Yes, at every stage you're saying goodbye to the people that you love. Family, home, job, warm climate. Yes, for some of you, you are going to cold climates and you might have to live in the snow this winter. And I feel very sad for you for that. Traditional food cooked by your mom. These are huge, huge losses. And for many of us, we don't ever have space and time to have the conversations of what we are saying goodbye to. We don't have time to talk about that. But if we don't talk about it, if we don't create space and time to grieve these things, then our emotional margin is going to be really full. And when new stress comes in, it's going to pour out in ways that we probably don't want it to. Christine said hugs from loved ones when life gets hard. That's a real, look, I'm getting tears in my eyes because that is a really big one. When you are far away from your loved ones and on those hard days, you really just want to be in person and share a meal or get a hug or a word of encouragement from a loved one. That's a huge thing to say goodbye to. You guys are right on top of all of this. What I do want to point out, which is really good news about these stages of grief, is that after acceptance comes purpose. And every single one of you know the purpose for what you are giving up. You are grieving all of these things because you're moving into your university years. You may be moving into your master's degree. You're doing this for your academic career. You're doing this for your career options. There is purpose in this. But what this can look like in university is this. Often the denial will look like this when you are packing up. This is all good. Everything about this is good. I'm so excited. You move into your dorm and it's like, I love everything about this. And then it looks like anger on the hard days. Why is this so hard? As if we expect it not to be so hard. The bargaining looks like, oh, this just wouldn't be so hard if only I could fill in the blank, right? If only I could see my mom, if only I could eat a home-cooked meal of my traditional foods that I'm used to, if only it wasn't so cold, if only my loved ones were closer, right? And then we get to the stage of depression where it's just like, oh, this feels hopeless. It feels as if the hardness is never going to go away. And then eventually we get to this place of acceptance and it's like, okay, I can do this. I can make it through the semester. I can make it through the year. And before you know it, it's summer break and you're back home to visit. But what purpose looks like after acceptance is this is hard because I'm letting go of something that I love so that I can experience something new. Acceptance and then moving into purpose acknowledges the hardship, but tells us that it's hard for a reason. And the reason I wanted to walk you through that is that I want you to know that you are going to experience all of those stages and you're not going to experience them in order and it's not going to be a straight line. There are going to be days when you are going to go from denial to bargaining to acceptance to anger all in one day. And that is totally okay. But you do want to make space and time to talk about what you're losing so that you have emotional margin for the stress. So why do we have to talk about stress in university and what are we stressed about? Stress can be defined as just any type of change that causes physical, emotional, or psychological strain. And stress is also your body's reaction to a challenge or demand. So obviously, if you are moving to a new place and you're going to a new school and you're starting a new degree, that's a lot of change. When you are in this pre-departure stage, you have a lot of stress going on because you have a lot of change coming. And the reason we want to talk about this is because stress isn't bad. Stress can actually be really good for us. But most of us have a real solid misunderstanding of what stress is. So when we have change taking place inside of our environment, we have arousal stress taking place in our body. And that stress actually, if you look at this curve, it actually allows us to perform better. So as our body feels the stress from the changes taking place in our environment, it tells us to gear up and get ready. And we have this comfort zone where we can live inside of stress and we can actually perform really well. If you see how this curve rises up here, this is your brain and your body rising to the occasion and saying, okay, we're stressed, but we can do this. This is like when you're studying for an exam and you're getting ready and the morning of the exam, you're feeling stressed, but your brain is so hyper alert that it allows you to perform better on that exam. This is if you're getting ready for a sporting event and you're training and training and training, and the morning of the event comes and your brain and your body rise to the occasion. What happens is when we live in this stress for too long and we cross over from good stress to distress in our body. And for many of us, living in Zimbabwe has brought us to this place of fatigue, where we have moved past the good stress and we are right here stuck in the fatigue. And our performance starts declining and we start getting exhausted and our immune system can't keep up with this and we move into breakdown. And this is what people will often talk about when they're talking about burnout. And if you are living in too much stress for too long, you may already be fatigued. You may already be feeling exhausted, and your immune system may already be impacted. And for those of you who this feels relatable to, what I want you to know is now is the time to reach out and get help before you start university, because you want to be starting university here, where the good stress is bringing you to a higher performance level. You do not want to start university over here in distress. And if you are here, then there are lots of things that a mental health professional can help you to do in order to move back over here so that you can perform at your best, which we know all of you want to be able to do that at university. There are 10 things that we can do every single day to keep our body healthy. And when we are talking about mental health, we want to talk about it not as mental illness, but as mental health. So just like you know, there are things that you can do for your body to remain physically fit, we want you to be able to do things for your brain and your body to remain mentally fit. And these are very simple things. None of these are complicated or hard. And I want you to keep track of these as you prepare to leave, and then as you enter into university and start preparing for courses to start. So sleeping right, you want to sleep the right number of hours at the right time of day. If you're sleeping during the day and working at night, that's going to throw your brain chemistry off. If you are sleeping for 4 hours, getting up and working and sleeping for another 2 hours before you go to class, that's going to throw your brain chemistry off. We are human beings. We require a lot of sleep, 8 to 10 hours a day at your age group, maybe even more in times of stress. And we need to sleep at night when it's dark out. We also need to eat well. This is a big one when you're moving into university and your diet is changing. Everyone's diet changes when they move onto campus, but especially when you are moving to a totally different culture, you want to make sure that you're eating well, that you have a nutritious diet, that you're eating enough fruits and vegetables and protein, that you're drinking enough water. Make sure that you do that. If you know that you battle with anxiety, please, please, please decrease your caffeine intake. When you get to university, you are probably going to drink a lot of Coke and a lot of coffee and a lot of black tea in order to keep your energy levels up. But we really want to remind you that caffeine is directly related to anxiety. So if you're already struggling with nervousness and anxiety, you want to reduce your caffeine. You want to abstain from drugs and alcohol. This is crucial. I cannot tell you how important it is for your mental health not to begin using drugs and alcohol as a coping skill. There is a difference between having a drink, with friends or having a glass of wine with a meal and using drugs and alcohol to relax. Alcohol is a depressant, and if you are using it to relax, it's going to depress your central nervous system, and it is not going to be good for your mental health. Sunlight. Many of you have already acknowledged that you come from a warm, sunny climate, and you may be moving to a place that is not so warm and sunny. Vitamin D is so important for your mental health. We need to get 30 minutes of direct sunlight every single day in order to boost our mental well-being. Manage stress. So you remember we saw in that curve that there's good stress and then it goes into distress. Remember that stress is totally unavoidable. We all have stress every single day. And when things change and they're outside of our control, we have higher levels of stress. So we want to learn how to manage and release our stress so that we have margin for the things that are to come. If every day we're just ignoring our stress and our stress levels are rising, then eventually we get to the point where we don't have space for any more change and any more hard things. And all of that just spills over. And it often spills over into anxiety or fear or anger. So exercise, we want to exercise at least 30 minutes a day, no matter what. This does not have to be lifting heavy weights or running a marathon. You just need to move your body for 30 minutes a day. Preferably, do something that is fun, that you love to do. You can knock out your 30 minutes of sunshine if you do your exercise outside. So that is something that you can multitask with. For your mental health, every single day you want to have fun. Now, my husband and I have really different ideas of fun. And when I say to him, like, I just want to do something fun, he often gets irritated with me because he likes everything to have a purpose. And fun is actually doing something that you enjoy that doesn't have a purpose. This isn't about accomplishing something. It's just doing something every single day that you love just for fun. And then we all need social connection. We need meaningful face-to-face connections every single day. And for many of you in your generation, as you move onto campus, you will remain connected with your loved ones and your friends regardless of the distance because of technology. And that is totally fine to have those social connections, but you also need to have face-to-face connection with friends and loved ones every single day. So you do need to make new friends on campus that you can see in person. And then 2 more things that you can do is to be of service. When you're having a bad day, one of the fastest way to boost your mood is to be of service and to do something for someone else. When you are volunteering or serving someone else, it helps remind you that you are part of a community. It reminds you of how much you have to offer, and it gives you a huge boost of serotonin, which is going to help you feel better. And then the last thing that we need to do every single day when things are hard is we need to ask for help. You do not have to wait until you are depressed or until you're having panic attacks to ask for help. When you're having a hard day, when things are just rough, reach out and ask for help. So those are your 10 things that you can do every single day for your mental health. So I want to give you these reminders, and I'm going to ask my husband to share his experience with us in this. I want you to remember that some things are just hard. Transitions are hard. Living outside of your culture is hard. And university, especially the first year of university, is hard. So those things are just going to be hard. What I also want you to remember is that hard does not mean that you're doing it wrong. It does not mean that something is wrong with you. And it does not mean that you are alone in this, right? Every student who's moving into university for the first time is going to have hard days. This is a hard season. This is a big transition season. So just know that when you feel like this is hard, it does not mean that you are alone, and it doesn't mean that something's wrong with you, right? That is shame speaking. And just because things are hard, it doesn't mean that we need to have shame. So Nyash, do you want to come and share your experience with the students for a few minutes? So last year, Nyasha and I had to pack up our kids unplanned and go to the States during COVID. The embassy evacuated American citizens, and we were among those that evacuated. I have lived in Zimbabwe for 16 years, 7 of those married to Nyasha. And I talk about how hard it is to live outside of my culture almost every day. That's a conversation that I have. And for a long time, I think that annoyed you that I would talk about how hard it is. And then all of a sudden we were on an airplane and we were in the States, and we thought we might be there for 2 months, and we ended up being there for a year. And it was really easy for me to be there. It was really hard for our 2 daughters who are 6 and 17. And it was really hard for Nyasha. So I thought that you might have questions for him, or that his experience might be interesting for you guys to hear what it was like for him living in America for a year.
Hi, guys. So I think for me, it was, first of all, it was a bit of a shock because I'd been to America a number of times, but the longest I'd stayed was probably 3 months when Vivi was born. Mm-hmm. And this last trip was the longest that I've done. And I had to mentally prepare for it. Fine, it was the pandemic that kind of made us be there longer, but I had to mentally prepare for it and literally just tell myself that I'm going to be here for a long time. Not that there's anything wrong with America. It's a fantastic place. But if you are, if you have moved from what is home and put to a different place, and then for a period or temporary period call that home, I think you have to mentally make a decision that this is going to be home. And that's one for me. And 2 was that I then intentionally, for me, it was fortunate because then I had my family with me. So I had my cushion, or you want to call it, or my support system with me. So if you're moving by yourself, I think that's what I would encourage, is you find a cushion or a support system, one or two people that you can relate with, that, as Regina said earlier, that you are face to face with. But also what I then did with that is I then had people that are my people back home, 2 or 3 that I would continuously communicate with for support and just to remain grounded. And then thirdly, what I made a decision mentally was that, who am I as a person? Really just knowing myself and grounding myself in my identity, and not allowing the exposure or the life of America to influence the person that I am. So naturally, I'm very laid back, so I don't get moved by a lot of things. So there are some parts of America that are mind-blowing. There's some parts that are like, it's just people who are doing exactly the same thing anywhere in the world.
I'm sure you're all going to amazing places.
And what I didn't allow, or something that I find that helped me a lot, is to be really centered in myself, and to have that center where I'm centered in who I am, I'm centered in Christ. And whenever I'm not sure, I always take a moment to ask or pray, and just before I do anything major, I'm always coming back to that, what I call my core, which is my center, really. And that's something that I encourage people, that the world is not going to stop because you've moved to a different place geographically. The world is going to carry on. Things are going to happen, good and bad. But if you learn the skill to just be centered in yourself and have a support system, and not allow the world to really dictate where you're going or who you're going to become, you can go and live anywhere in the world.
I have a question. What surprised you about America? Like, what surprised you that was easy for you to adjust to, and what surprised you that was hard to adjust to?
I think there's certain cultures about the US that I will never make effort to adjust to, because I just don't fit myself into it.
Like what?
That's a very random question. I'm trying to think of something on top of my head.
Well, I'm trying to think of what was hard for you. The food was hard for you to adjust to.
Food is always going to be a challenge, because
even for the girls,
there's all kinds of food there that you can imagine or think of. It's all there available for you. It's just that sometimes the taste or the texture is not going to be the same depending on where you go. So that was always a challenge, or is always a challenge for me.
You don't like that there's so many choices of like bread and cereal?
There's too many breads, there's too many cereals, there's too many options, which you can get carried away with. Some of the things you would never even have a desire to try, because there's just so much. So like walking into a grocery store there and a shop here are worlds apart, because there's just so many, like literally anything you can think of, you will find it. And for me, I just didn't allow myself to be taken away by that. The only thing that I settle for and I really enjoy is my coffee creamers that I find in the US that I can't find here, which are your flavored coffees and stuff. It's because I love my coffee. So that's like an option that I wish I could bring home, but I can't really. So
what surprised you that was hard about being there? Like, we knew it was going to be hard to be away from home and from family, but were there other things that surprised you that weren't necessarily expected?
Well, I mean, we were there at a crazy time politically as well. So, things were happening with the Donald Trump and the election and all of that stuff. So that felt a little bit more like Africa.
And COVID.
Yeah, and COVID. But, the political side felt a little bit more like Africa, more like home. So I wasn't as moved or as shocked as most Americans were, because I was like, wow, we see this pretty much every other election in our country. And I think the other thing that really helped me was, maybe it's going to be different for you guys because you're there for a period of time, to just take things day at a time. Mm-hmm. There were days where I'd be thinking, man, I still got months to get back home. And I just have to fight through this. That really helped me to just wake up in the morning and say to myself, I just have to get to 8 o'clock tonight, and then go to bed and start again tomorrow, without really trying to do everything in my head with the future, 4 months, 3 months ahead of time. that would have just depressed me. So
one day at a time.
One day at a time for me is key to not get depressed. Because if I try and focus on sometimes the period that's ahead of me and the emotions of wanting to connect with back home, I would easily get depressed. So the day at a time for me is very key, to just wake up and say, okay, I don't feel so great today, but I just have to get 8 o'clock. Yeah. So I just go through the motions and through the stuff and be present in whatever I'm doing throughout the day. And then when the night comes, I'm like, thank you, Lord, I made it tonight. I'm going to go to bed again, and I'm going to do it again. And then it just becomes a habit of just doing it again, knowing you have a goal. And I think that's the other thing, like, because you're going to university and you're going to school, there is a goal. So to just keep your eyes on the prize, as they say, you know, to just keep your eyes on the prize, to keep your eyes on the prize. And then I think that will really help.
Now, if you have any questions for Nyasha, please send them through, because I'd love to ask him before he runs off. I will say that one of the things I saw that helped you was finding people in America that you could either talk to on the phone or meet with face-to-face who understood you. And I think that was crucial. Our first 5 months in the States, we were in Southern California, we were in Orange County, and we were in one of the whitest places. We were in Huntington Beach. And a month after we got there, George Floyd was murdered. And America was in the middle of this racial reconciliation. I don't even know what to call it. This reckoning that was happening in America around race. And I think you quickly saw that not everyone was going to be a safe place to process your emotions with, and that you had to find 1 or 2 people that could be that safe place. But you did find them, and that served you well to have those conversations.
Yeah, and I think it's to be intentional as well, to know that you're going to be here for a period of time, to not isolate, to intentionally find 2 or 3 people that you know you're going to have common ground on a number of issues or different things. People that kind of think like you, that you can relate to, that you can start opening up to. That's really going to help being in a place. You should not isolate. No matter what you do, do not isolate. America is not a place to isolate, because everything is big.
Yeah, and you can hide.
You can hide. You can almost be undetectable at all. Like you can completely disappear, and no one will even pay attention that you are hiding. Unlike here, people be like, "Hey, what are you doing? Where are you?" kind of situation, because everything is big. So it's a big world, and it makes it easier to hide. So I would encourage people to not do that. If you feel you're going to do that, reach out to someone and say, "Hey, this is what I'm feeling."
Yeah, if you're an isolator,
do not isolate.
Address that with an accountability partner before you go. This is a great question for us. For couples that move to the U.S. and one partner is a student while the other isn't, how best can the one not studying occupy themselves so that they don't become listless or regret moving? This is a really good question, because usually when we're in the States, we're there for my work, and you're often just there with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And
so how do you stay occupied?
That's the other thing. There's so much to do to keep yourself occupied. I took a few free online courses to keep myself busy.
You volunteered?
I volunteered. Some of the courses had to do with Regina's work, so that would create conversation that's broader in our home. So whatever you're studying, they could do a course that's in line with whatever you are doing. That's the thing about America is I don't think there's less room to regret, because there's so many options of the things that you can do. It's just to be open-minded and try pretty much everything, because you've got nothing to lose, rather than holding back and start to think, oh, I want to be home in Zimbabwe or home wherever and be doing A, B, C, D. If you've made the decision to move, then be present in that place at that time and find whatever you can in that period to do to keep your mind busy, but also not just to keep your mind busy, but to empower and grow yourself in whatever space or sphere that you're in.
Yeah.
So I think
you have a pretty good routine. Like you exercise.
Have a routine, but also keep your mind occupied and busy, and keep feeding your mind. Do not just then become idle and say, oh, I'm here because Regina is studying. You can study something. You can do ABCD, not knowing how the immigration statuses. If it's great, you can find a job at McDonald's and work, whatever, you know what I mean? But do not just be idle.
You have volunteered with multiple organizations. You've done quite a lot. There's often a Zimbabwean community almost everywhere.
Yeah.
So you could find Zimbabweans. That's a great thing.
Yeah.
This is a good question for you, Nyash. How did you cope with being a Black man in a white area? So I just want to preface this to say that I grew up in the Detroit area in Michigan, which is one of the Blackest cities in America. However, when we go back to the States, we are rarely there. We are often like in the most random small towns or just like pockets of like white evangelical America. So what was that like? I know even for our girls that was a struggle, moving from a place where it's 99% Black to a place where it was like 85% white. What was that like for you?
I think for me, it wasn't a shock. I think I've had, God bless me early in my young age to play cricket. And there were times where I was the only Black guy on a cricket tour. So the whiteness didn't surprise me at all. What probably was a little different on this trip was how exposed or how open the racism was in America. Unlike before, it was a very hidden thing. Mm-hmm. Whereas even when I played cricket, I knew in my team that ABCD I don't hang out with because they're racist. It was that apparent. So I think this period for me was also, I became a little bit more cautious being in a white area because not being silly or anything, there's a lot of crazy people out there. Yeah. And this year in America was clear that there could be a random white guy who's crazy enough to just not like a Black person down his path and do something crazy. So I had to be mentally prepared for those kind of things and know that there's this conversation that's happening in the background. And thank God I'm naturally just a well-behaved person. I don't drink, I don't smoke. So I'm not going to be doing anything crazy, but I think to just be cautious, to know where you're welcome and where you're not, because there's certain places you're not going to be welcome, and just to be okay with that and not take that to heart and know that people are wounded everywhere in the world and it's not your fault. They're probably going through something that they need to figure it out, or if they'll never figure it out, I don't know, but I'm not going to make it my business to prove a point when I don't need to. So just to be cautious and aware that there's this ongoing conversation, and not every person of the white community is going to be as open to you as you would like them to be.
And a big part of protecting your energy this past year in the States was realizing that some of our white friends who would want to have conversations about race and like learn from you, that you would say, well, you can talk to Regina about that. Like you didn't feel as if you were responsible for educating every white person who wanted to understand racism.
I mean, that's the thing. Like things like racism, other people's actions, I try hard not to internalize it because it's their own issue. I can address and be present the best that I can, but I'm not going to allow that to derail my life or my thoughts or my emotions and get depressed about someone who is not even thinking about me after they've done something. So I'm very aware of how wounded and broken people are in the world. And I've just created a balance in myself to say, once I go past that stage and I'm back at my house, that person really doesn't matter. So also what they have done shouldn't matter and hold my life back.
Yes. So I think that was really helpful. I hope that it was helpful for you to hear Nyasha's experience. I will tell you that a lot of your safe people that you engaged with in the States last year were people that have immigrated to the States from African countries and African Americans. Like most of your closest people in the States weren't necessarily like white. They weren't white people. I think maybe it was like half and half at the most.
I mean, there's and I'll say this, a lot of the white people that I interact with in the States are Christians.
Yes.
And our relationship is based on that relationship that we have with the Lord. And so it's easier to open and have conversations with them that are difficult.
Because you had a foundation.
Yeah. Even with some of them that I know how they think, I know exactly how to interact with them. but I'm never going to allow their thinking, their actions to dictate my life and where I should go and how my emotions should work inside of my body. I just think it's a lot of energy to invest in people that, I don't want to say that don't matter, but people who are outside of your life.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. And so I would just encourage you on your campus. Thanks, babe. I would love to encourage you on your campus to connect with there will usually be like a international student organization. There will probably be a Black student caucus or union, something like that. And maybe even a organization for students who have immigrated or who are studying, who are from Africa. So I would really encourage you to get involved in as many of those as possible, because it is so important to be able to have people who have shared experience with you. And if you are moving to a campus that is in a majority white culture and in a majority white community, you will need to have people who have shared experience with you, because it can feel almost like insanity to move into another culture, because everything that has been true about your experience is different for the experience of the people who are there. I know that is true for me moving to Zimbabwe. I was 26 years old when I moved to Zimbabwe, and I had the experience of a white girl growing up in America. And when I moved to Zimbabwe, and everyone around me's experience was so different. I was living in a high density area in Vic Falls called Mukosana. And I was living with an Ndebele family, and I was learning about their experiences, and our experiences were so different that it almost, I mean, I really did have this experience where I had to acknowledge that so much of what was true for my life was not true for the other people around me anymore. And so you will want people that have had shared experience with you and who are going through similar experiences living outside of their culture as you are. So that is very important. So remember, transitions and living outside of your culture in the first year of university are hard. Hard doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It does not mean there's something wrong with you. And it does not mean that you are alone in that. It is hard for everybody. And it is not hard because there is something wrong with you. It is hard because it is hard. And then what are the solutions for that? Number one, be prepared and have a plan for those hard moments. Nyasha was talking about that. He was talking about how he expected this year that he spent in the States to be difficult. He knew there were going to be hard things about it. So be prepared. Tell yourself right now, there are going to be some hard things that I have to experience in this first year. And when it's hard, this is what I'm going to do. Right? Now that's going to be different for everybody. It might be, I'm going to call my best friend. It might be, I'm going to call my family. It might be, I'm going to call my counselor. It might be, I'm going to check in with my advisor. It might be, I'm going to journal, or I'm going to pray, or I'm going to sing, or I'm going to dance, but have a plan for when it is hard. Do those things every day that we just spoke about that are good for your mental health, and then know when to ask for help. You want to ask for help when the hardness of life is interfering with your daily life. And you guys have asked some really good questions that I want to answer before we move on. How can more mature students cope with going back to school after a long absence in the classroom? That is a really good question. Now, I will tell you that when Nyasha, right before Nyasha and I got married, I started another master's degree. And I probably started this degree for the wrong reasons. It was a master's degree in missional leadership. I was 34 years old, and I hadn't been in the classroom, for a few years. I've done quite a lot of post-master's training, and I've taken many, many courses for continuing education, but I had not started another degree program. And it was, I will not lie, it was harder. It was harder to be older. It was harder to have a different life perspective than the people in the classroom. But it was totally manageable. I have found that most things that are difficult lose some of their power when I acknowledge how difficult they are. So when I started that degree, I said to all the people in my cohort, I said, wow, this is really hard for me. I'm the only person living internationally, flying in for my classes. I was the only woman. and I was a little bit older and had more experience than some of the people in the cohort. And I just said, like, this is why it's hard. And by acknowledging that with some of my colleagues, they were able to help me in the ways that it was hard, but also it was a relief for me to not have to shoulder this burden, like a secret hardship, right? To just acknowledge, like, whoa, this is different. Another question that we have is, how does one balance conversations back home with family and friends? That can be a lot when one also has stressful classes and juggling transitions. This is a really important question for us. So when we are talking about our emotional margin, we have to be honest with ourselves about how much margin we have. And if your phone calls to your friends and to your family are heavy, where they're talking to you about the hard things that are going on in their life and how hard life is back at home, and they're needing a lot from you, you are probably going to have to limit how much time you have for those conversations. And what I would be honest with myself about is I would look at my course load, I would look at my mental health, I would look at my physical health, I would look at all the stress in my life, and I would acknowledge how much time is actually safe for me to set aside for those conversations. Even if they're not heavy conversations, even if they're just social conversations, some people will expect that you can be available at all times, right? Some people will ignore the time difference. Some people will ignore how busy your schedule is and just want more of you than you have to offer. And setting those healthy boundaries to be able to say, like, hey, I'd really like to chat with you, but I'm super busy writing a paper right now. So can we talk on Saturday afternoon because I have a little bit of time? If you can set a boundary for yourself in that way, it's going to help you be prepared. Do not feel in any way, shape, or form that you have to be available 24 hours a day for your friends or your family. You have set a goal for yourself. You are at school for your education. And just like you have to balance your social time with your friends and your social clubs and your outings on campus, you also have to balance how much time you are offering on the phone or FaceTime or all of that. So boundaries, boundaries, boundaries are so important. And people will respect your boundaries. Anyone who doesn't respect your boundary is not a healthy person in your life. If someone argues with you when you set a boundary with them, that is a warning sign that something is not right there. So I do want to talk to you about this because I think it's super important. When we talk about things are going to be hard, I want you to understand that some things are hard for everybody. Transitions are hard for everybody. The first year of university is hard for everybody. Living outside of your culture is so fun, but it is also a struggle for everybody. It can be exhausting to live outside of your own culture where you are understanding everything in a new way and you're having to be understood through the lens of someone else's culture all day long. It can be exhausting and draining. However, we do want to understand that every single person has a different experience, and some of those experiences make things even more hard. So I want you to understand how your history plays a part in making these transitions easier or harder, because I don't want you to be the cause of your own stress, right? Just like I want you to do those 10 things every day so you create margin for your mental health, I want you to understand that you have a unique history. Some of you have experienced trauma in childhood. Some of you have experienced trauma in young adulthood. And that trauma history means that you have more hyper alert amygdala, and things are going to feel more dangerous than they maybe are. Or you're going to be more hyper alert to dangerous or uncomfortable situations. So everyone has a unique history. Some people's histories have been a little easier. Some people's have been a little harder. Every single person has unique needs. Every single one of us needs certain things for our life and on a daily basis. But for some of us, those needs are different, right? I might need to move my body for 30 minutes a day, but you may be like my husband, a professional athlete who thinks 30 minutes of exercise is not enough. You need an hour and a half of exercise in order to meet the needs of your body and your mind. So you need to understand your unique history, your unique needs, right? Just like a diabetic needs a special diet, some of us have certain needs that we have for our success. So unique history, unique needs means that we have a unique approach. And what that means is that you have to have an approach with yourself that is full of compassion and full of empathy. For many of us, when things are hard, shame sets in and we start to think there's something wrong with us, right? And we're the only one that this is happening to. And that shame cannot exist when we are surrounded by empathy. And most often, we need to be showing compassion and empathy to ourselves. So if you know that you have had hard things that have happened to you in your life that make change and transition harder for you, reach out to someone right now as you're preparing to go to university and talk through that and say, I'm going to need help with this transition because change is hard for me. If you know that you have specific needs in your life, like maybe you need more time with family than your friends do, you want to talk through that and be prepared for what that's going to be like when you get to campus and you aren't seeing your family every day. So you want to be compassionate and empathetic to yourself as you create this approach to this new year that you have at school. I'm trying to keep track of the chat, and in case there are questions, please make sure you pop in, because if not, I'm just going to keep talking till our time is up. One of the things that I think I would be remiss if I didn't share with you is that we know that COVID is not going away. We know that there are spikes all around the world happening right now, and that there is a chance that you may be doing some online learning. Even if you're not doing online learning in the fall, there's a chance throughout the year that this may happen. And one of the things that came up in your questionnaires is that people wanted to know how they can cope with online learning. The most important thing that I can tell you about online learning is that technology and mental health are so linked. We know that for people who spend 5 to 7 hours a day on a smartphone, which sounds like a lot, but if your smartphone tells you how much time you spend on it every day, you will be shocked that you probably spend a lot more than that. But 5 to 7 hours on a smartphone makes you twice as likely to experience depression. What happens when we are on a screen is that our brain activity increases to a degree that is similar to actual anxiety brain activity. So if you're on the screen for online learning and you're using your phone, you're using your tablet, you're using your computer, you need to know that you have to take breaks and give yourself space to bring your brain chemistry back down. You're going to want to do some meditation, some mindfulness activities. You're going to want to get some fresh air. You're going to want to move your body, drink extra water so that you can calm your brain activity down. And for many of you, you are adolescents and your brain is not fully developed. It will not be fully developed until you are 25. And because you may not be 25 yet and your brain is still developing, it actually takes you longer to return to a state of calm. So you will need more breaks than someone my age would. And then these things I really want you to be able to watch out for on campus. This is not to depress you, but this is just to say that there are 5 big mental health struggles that on-campus counseling centers are aware of. And hopefully when you get to campus and you are having your introduction to the campus and your orientation, they're going to show you where the counseling center is and they're going to show you how to make appointments. But what counselors on campus are aware of is that there are 5 things that happen more often on college campuses than they do outside of college campuses. Those are depression, anxiety, eating disorders, suicidal thoughts, and addiction. So if you have a predisposition to any of these things, if you've already battled an eating disorder, if you have struggled with depression or anxiety, if you have been using drugs or alcohol to cope with hard emotions or hard days, and if you have had suicidal thoughts, I would love for you to reach out either to Education Matters or to me before you even leave for campus. Reach out right away so that we can talk through what you need to do in order to prepare for this year successfully, knowing that these 5 things are going to be bigger on campus than they would be elsewhere, and that you can prepare yourself for success by knowing that these have already been a struggle for you. This is a quote that I just think is really powerful that I would love for you guys to remember. And Tapiwa does such a great job of making a handout of these notes. So hopefully you'll be able to remember this. Remember that we all carry a heavy burden, and that C.S. Lewis said this, mental pain is less dramatic than physical pain, but it is more common and also more hard to bear. The frequent attempt to conceal mental pain increases the burden. It is easier to say my tooth is aching than to say my heart is broken. But I want you to remember that everyone on campus is going to have some sort of mental hurt. People are going to be carrying heavy burdens. And when we say, my heart is hurting, this is hard, and another person looks at us and says, me too, that forms a bond that is so powerful. So we're going to close with this, if you don't have any other questions, is when do you know it's time to reach out? You need to reach out when it's debilitating. If you have tried and tried and tried and nothing is making you feel better and you can't think of other things, reach out. If this has been the main thing that you've focused on for 3 weeks and you don't feel better, I want you to reach out for help. If you're doing those things, if you're eating, if you're sleeping, if you're exercising and getting fresh air and sunshine, and you're drinking your water and you're volunteering, if you're trying to do all those things and nothing is getting better, please, please, please reach out for help. If your anxiety is impacting the 3 most important parts of your life, your family, friends, and your schoolwork, straight up, get help. You don't have to wait. If those 3 things are impacted, get help. And if it's gone on for too long, if you have been struggling with your mental health for 6 months, reach out for help. You do not have to go through this alone. And when you're seeking treatment, just be aware that you're likely going to have talk therapy appointments, right? If you go to the counseling center and say, I'm struggling with anxiety, I'm struggling with depression, or, I'm feeling suicidal, or I've been restricting or binging and purging with my food, or I've been using drugs or alcohol, they're probably going to make you a counseling appointment. But inside of that counseling appointment, they're going to ask you to make some lifestyle changes. And those 10 things that we spoke about are the changes they're going to talk about. They're going to say, let's make sure you're exercising. Let's make sure you're eating. Let's make sure you're getting fresh air and you're getting enough sleep. They may recommend an antidepressant for medication, and they may recommend a nutritious diet and vitamins and supplements. But when you're seeking treatment, one of those things isn't going to do it on its own. You're likely going to have a combination. So even though you're reaching out and going to counseling, you're still going to want to do those 10 things, and you're still going to want to have a nutritious diet. And if you know that you are struggling right now before you even leave for school, these are some phone numbers that you can reach out for help. This first number is my phone number. I offer a group and individual sessions that might be helpful for you. The Christian Counseling Center offers sessions via Zoom or in person for $15 a session. And the bottom number is the Friendship Bench, which has sessions free of charge if you call that number to make an appointment. And I just want you to know that this year is going to be full of joy. It's going to be full of fun and new experiences. And if you take care of your mental health, if you create margin for the stress that is going to happen, you are going to enjoy your time on campus so immensely. I can tell you that I have things, I'm in my bedroom office right now, and honestly, I have, I'll just grab it really quick. I have my Michigan State hat right here. I have Spartan things all over. I have things from WashU all over my office and my house because I loved university. I loved the learning. I loved the friendships that I made in both of my degree programs. I am such a huge advocate of the life that is offered through these academic experiences. And I just want you to know that my mental health, my first year of university, was not where it should have been. And that made Michigan State a bigger struggle for me. And I actually took a year off and got my mental health right and went back to school. I went back to Michigan State and completed my degree. And it was a totally different experience for me. And I just know that if your mental health is a focus for you, if you pay attention and do the things that you need to do so that your mental health is healthy, your college experience is going to be so much more enjoyable. And it's already going to be fun. And I'm so excited for each and every one of you. And I just hope that this was helpful in helping you to prepare as you get ready to go to school, because we want you to have the best experience you possibly can. If you had questions that you didn't get to answer, please feel free to contact Education Matters or to PIWA and get those questions out there, and we'll make sure that we get them answered. If you want to reach me and you are already in the US, this phone number at the top, this Making Sense of Your Worth phone number, that is my cell phone number. That's my WhatsApp number. You can WhatsApp me there, or I will make sure that Tapiwa gets you my email address as well. And you can reach out and ask your questions there, or send them in to Education Matters, and we will make sure that you get a response. Tapiwa, I don't know if you want to jump in and close things off, or if any other questions came directly to you, but I know that we're over our time and we want to just honor people's data and their time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Regina. That was amazing and very helpful. I think we've come to the end of our time. I haven't received any more questions. Okay. We have recorded this meeting, and so we'll make it available on our YouTube channel, and I'll share the link in the pre-departure orientation group, as well as just if anyone wants to contact Education Matters, as Regina mentioned. And I will be sharing a resource, which will include the phone numbers in case anyone didn't get a chance to jot those down. Yes. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we wish you all the best as you go to university. So super excited for you all. And Michigan is great.
Yes, it is. So East Lansing is just so much fun. I'm so sorry for all of you that are not going to Michigan State. I know you will also enjoy your universities as well. And if you have questions for Nyasha as well, send them in and we will make sure that he connects with you. Enjoy your time and just have such a great launch. I hope that you are all getting packed up and ready to go. Bye, you guys.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Regina.
Bye, Tapiwa.